Next.
Elaine Boozler. Okay. Yeah.
The next morning
hang on. I screwed my hair up. Okay. Sorry. I didn't mean to. Okay. I'm good. Welcome to See View Circle, our podcast in which we review and recap our favorite TV shows and movies from the past, present, and possibly the future. And in the process, chat about styles, fashion, and locations often lost to the decades. We do this all in service to our end goal of determining just how highbrow or lowbrow our viewing taste is.
Here we are. We are here. We finally made it to the final recap podcast of this first season of Sea View Circle. We have been covering the first season of KnotsLanding, the longest-running nighttime soap from its era. This is actually a two-parter episode.
2 parts.
And I think for this time, we're going to do something a little bit different because we're actually going to cover both episodes in one podcast. So we hope you bear with us. It could take us a little while to get through all of this.
We'll probably talk about one storyline and then focus on the other storyline just to keep it simple.
Yeah. I think that's going to work good. Of course, this episode that we're covering is called The Bottom of the Bottle. This is parts 1 and 2, and I believe they aired on March 20th and March 27th in the year of 1980. But of course, you can watch them now over on plex.tv. And aren't they available now? First season's available?
Yes, I just saw it's available on Amazon Prime and on Apple TV. I don't know if that's I assume streaming.
Before we get into the episode, though, we do have a letter from the sack.
Yes.
And I would like you to read it.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I read it. This is on the fly.
It is on
Give
the
it
fly.
to me. I don't know what I'm reading, but... So this is actually a diary entry from Abby.
Abby.
Yes, you know who Abby is?
Abby, I don't know. Read it.
Well, this is not working. I've got to get away from here. Life is slipping by and I'm in a rut. It's all Jeff's fault. He has no ambition. I won't let him drag me down. I've got plans for myself. I'm going to be somebody. You can bet on that. I want to have power and money. I want to make the rules. And that's not going to happen as long as I stay here. Start making up a game plan, Abby. Olivia and Brian deserve the best that money can buy.
They do.
I'm going to get it for them. Start things in motion. It shouldn't be hard to convince Jeff that we don't belong together. I think he's known that for years. What is going to be tough is making him realize it's all his fault. I won't let him dump the failure of this marriage on me. Work fast, Abby. Lay a guilt trip on him before he has time to attack.
Oh, my God.
The best defense is always a great offense. Keep him off balance, and the kids and I will be in the clear. That's the trouble with these idealistic do-gooders like Jeff. Their conscience is their downfall. I'm counting on that to work in my favor. Wow.
She's manipulative from the get-go.
She sure is.
I wonder how she's going to fit into our podcast.
Is that season 2? Does she come?
Season
yes.
2.
Heading into season 2, we'll have the beginnings, the great beginnings of Abby.
Yes.
Fairgate.
Looking forward
Ewing.
to it. Cunningham. Sumner. Now, on the off chance that you're sitting there wondering how to contact these two weirdos, you may do so via our Instagram. That is at seeviewcircle, SEEVIEW Circle. You can also leave comments for us over on our Spotify, which we have been getting a lot of great comments over there recently.
You can also email us. It's seeviewcircle@gmail.com. Again, all one word, C spelled S-E-E.
And if you have any questions, they might lead to a future Untying the Knots segment. So send them in. All right, now back to the episode. We have this two-parter here, so let's get right into it. We have the writers of these episodes. The first part is written by Calvin Clements Jr. This is a new name to KnotsLanding. But in the second part, we have a very familiar name because the second part is written by our own John Plachette.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing, just so you know. I guess there's a thing that is known in the TV biz that if you have cast members that have been on for a while and they might expect, say a raise or something after a certain amount of episodes or seasons, a way to sort of placate those financial concerns is to offer them the ability to write or direct episodes, which gives them additional pay without having to raise like the pay of everybody.
Right. So in a way that they don't get people to be like, oh, why did that person get a raise and I didn't?
Right.
Well, they directed an episode.
Exactly. And I'm sure also, you know, as an actor or whatever, you're working on a show for a long period of time, you might get a little, I don't know, bored, or you might say like, oh, I can contribute in other ways other than what I'm doing.
Listen, I would be up for that. Hey, if you want to be a producer today, or you want to be a, you know, I mean, I think it'd be exciting to do that, to kind of
absolutely
expand your horizons.
I think
a little
this
bit.
is the first time, right, that we have seen one of the cast members participate in such a manner, but we're going to see a lot of people do this over the seasons. So will be interesting to see the differences in, say, part 1 and part 2, just from a writing standpoint, and see if we can notice any.
We'll see if
anything
it like changes up.
Now, the director is actually the same for both episodes, and that is Roger Young. And Roger Young also directed, I believe, the episode with Lucy when she came to town, Home is for Healing, and maybe another one too, but I know pretty sure that Home is for Healing, I think.
So you want me to do the IMDb synopsis?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So after earning a promotion, reformed alcoholic Gary starts drinking again, which causes him to spiral out of control until sick and violent. He lands in a detox ward.
I don't know about you, but I need a drink.
I need a drink too. Wait. Now, here's a question. Does anybody have an answer for this? Why is it when you have a mug, when most people are right-handed, it has a message that you need to hold it in your left hand? It's very awkward, especially when you have a microphone.
A mug that says forget to drink. I forget to drink. I forgot to drink.
No, it says I drink to forget.
And Gary does too, apparently. We're going to find out soon enough. This is my brandy snifter. And,
it's just Smiley, but it's getting a little like we got to fix him a little bit.
Fix him. But have no fear, friends. We are completely stocked up for these episodes.
Now, starting with the intro, which certainly looks like it's a doozy of an episode. They did give away a bit, and immediately the first thing I saw was recess room. Bar, and I got all excited. So, because as a fan of vintage bars, it makes me want to find out like where.
Yeah, whenever Doug does his intro and says he's a fan of vintage everything, clothes, music, decor, it also includes restaurants and bars.
And most of the time, it is restaurants and bars.
Yeah, and
I love.
You know, don't send us on a hunt for a vintage bar or restaurant,
and especially if it's like in the Valley or in the greater Los Angeles area. I'm all excited because I keep hoping that it's still around so I can go check it out.
Spilling drinks over here.
You spilled a drink?
Drinks over here. Well, the scene opens up with a close-up shot of a bar cart and
lots of bar glasses and booze.
It feels just like home.
Yeah, it does feel like home. I thought initially I was like, oh, what bar are they at? And then, of course, pretty quickly we realize we're not at a bar. We're at a
70s home that it has a fully stocked bar, which just feels very familiar to me.
And in the olden days, it was way more acceptable to drink.
Absolutely. I mean, bar carts were like a necessity of the household.
I told you the story was when I
was a wet bar in your living room.
When I was a little kid, we used to play with the bar cart and we would make cocktails. We'd play cocktails.
Same.
We would that's what my sister would make.
I think my big thing was what would be like the ice bucket and the ice bucket tong thing, and just that was part of the thing. You put even if there was no ice, you just pretend.
We liked the maraschino cherries, and then we'd do 7-Up. We put 7-Up and a maraschino cherry and a little straw in there, and we'd be all excited, because we were like being like the adults. We're like, oh, they have cocktails.
Isn't it interesting how, say, drinking and or smoking is so romanticized, really, from the beginning of time with cinema to the point where we, as young, impressionable kids, would be sitting there at a bar cart making drinks as we're like 6.
I was like in Mommy Dearest when Joan gets her daughter to bring me a drink. She teaches her how to make...
Joan is like slurred over.
She's got,
chair,
Christina's learned how to make her a drink. And I agree. I think that's really...
Doesn't she stir with her finger or something?
I don't know. But I was always thinking like, well, that's great. Too bad we can't teach the cat how to make a cocktail.
Hello.
The cats could make us cocktails.
Right.
But anyway...
So we kind of can't really see who's there, but we can overhear. And I'm telling you, Doug,
some of this
listen to this.
Yes, me too.
About 7 times.
Yeah, and I did hear "Beautiful Showgirl."
Yeah,
and I was like, "Where are they?"
Yeah,
and then I heard, "How do you like children barbecued?" And it was the WC I heard the voice. I was like, it sounds like John Plachette, but like this sounds really raunchy compared to my normal, like what I hear in KnotsLanding. But then I think it's Sid who said, "Oh, something about pretty good W.C. Fields impersonation."
Yeah,
and then it kind of opens up, and then we realize, okay, we're not at a bar, right?
So right away, I knew what this episode was about, and I knew we had this in our collection of weird and crazy vintage things. I don't know if you can really see it. This is a lamp. I'm going to turn it on only for a second.
It's a W.C. Fields bar lamp.
Look at this. It says bar, and it's W.C. Fields with his red nose because he's been drinking too much.
Because he's a drunk.
He has a pool stick and a 8-ball, and it's just really nicely like molded and fun.
It's very heavy.
Yeah, it is. It's like, I guess it's plaster. I don't know.
It is like plaster.
We had it outside because we have a bar as well. Trust.
Outside. We have an outside bar.
And we had this outside for many, many years. So when I brought it out for this podcast, I did have to clean it up a little bit. But so happy to have this as part of this episode. And I can't believe we haven't even gotten beyond the first line of the episode yet.
So let's keep going. Let's keep going.
So we pull back and we do see Gary at an ice bucket, and he might be putting in some ice in a drink.
And we don't really see what he's drinking, but then I see the bottle, and it's like Evian or something, or Perrier.
And Richard comes up and says, "Hey, aren't you forgetting something? The booze." And then Gary says, "Oh, well, you remember I don't drink."
Yeah.
And he says, "Oh, you're being so sanctimonious," or something like that, right? So then we kind of pan over, join the rest of the party. And there's a cake.
There's a cake that shows up, and it's got Gary's name on it.
Does it say like good luck or something like that?
Yeah, congratulations.
Was there a sparkler in it, maybe? I can't remember.
I think so.
Yeah. And then there's this presentation of this wrapped little thing, and it's to Gary, and Gary's like, what
and
is
Sid
this?
basically says something, this is the cake for the Veep. They kind of announced that he's being given the role of the vice president of KnotsLanding Motors.
Pretty darn quick,
which is very sweet.
Me, but good for
But
for
you
Gary.
can see the pride in, like, Sid is so sweet, and I just thought, he didn't have to do this, and you could see that Gary is actually very excited and kind of moved by it.
Absolutely,
because for him, this is his first venture into kind of this kind of world outside of the family business.
Right. He's super excited. Now, if you notice from afar, if you looked at Val, she already did look a little worried in her eyes in that moment. Now, she came over that and started to congratulate him. But in the first moment you see her, she's like, uh-oh, like it's too much too soon, maybe, right? She knows who this guy is. So he's presented with this little gift. I love it when they're trying to figure out what it is. And Laura says, oh, it's an umbrella. A teensy-weensy umbrella. That was so weird. But it ends up being the placard, right? His little desk placard with his name and his title that he then puts around his...
he puts it around his neck.
His neck.
But I was going to say, he should have probably had this instead. This is where the episode's going. This is not that we want to get on a tangent, but this is called the swinger glass from the 60s. And... it's so you never lose your cocktail glass. You put it around your neck.
You never want to lose that cocktail glass.
So I have used this at parties, several parties, and I got to tell you, it's great because you don't lose your cocktail. Because you know how it is. If you have like more than one or two, usually you kind of, especially in a party, you're running around. Yeah. And then, where did I leave my drink? Where did I leave my drink? Yeah, you never have to lose it. It's got it right there. Anyway.
So everybody's so excited. They're so excited for Gary, and he looks really handsome there in that moment. And then I don't know who has the champagne, but did you notice Karen's so excited?
Yeah,
like,
and so there's
not enough champagne.
They pop the champagne. It's like coming out, and then of course
Richard drinks some of it straight from the bottle.
Yeah, straight from the bottle, and then they're handing out glasses, and of course then you see they hand Gary a glass.
Sid hands the. I looked.
Yeah, Sid
handed
hands
it to him. Glass. They all have a celebratory toast drink, and Gary does take some, and Val clocks on right away, and she's like, what
she's like, oh boy.
He doing?
Yeah, she has a look on her face like, ooh, this ain't good.
So the celebration kind of continues, but then a little bit later on, Richard goes up to Gary and says, oh, you can have some more. He says, remember, I don't drink. He goes, oh, this isn't drink, it's champagne.
It's champagne. Now, I think that that's a kind of interesting take on the society we live in too, because let's face it, everything that's celebratory is geared around drinking. Everybody's like, oh, we're gonna have this, and it's very slippery slope to just reward yourself.
I didn't know at this time who knew that he was an alcoholic.
Right, I didn't quite know either.
Obviously, we know that Val knows, right? And I do think that Richard knew because in the very first episode, Gary is at his little backyard party, and says, I don't drink.
No, I'm pretty sure that
but
Richard.
I thought Sid knew that too.
Yeah, but
at the same time.
Yeah, but I think what it is you've got that attitude of the people who are not alcoholics, who don't really understand.
Right. How slippery of a slope it is.
What a slippery slope that is. And I don't know. I mean, I've had several friends of mine who had been like alcoholics or like some kind of addict. And you know that you don't want to be the person.
Slip-ups.
You don't want to be the person to egg them on and be like, oh, it's okay. Because I mean, it's not okay. So I thought that was kind of a interesting thing, especially coming from Sid, who's being like the father figure.
Right. And also his boss.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought that was strange. And again, I still didn't know who knew. But after that, then Val comes up and they have this little sweet interaction where Gary says, oh, my gosh, it's finally starting to come together. You know, I finally did something without the help of my family. And I did it all on my own merit, got me this promotion. I'm so excited. You know, this is the beginning of what we were achieving to come to, you know, coming to California.
Yeah.
And she is very happy for him, and they give each other a hug or a kiss, and she is very proud of him in that moment. So I think the reason why Gary and Val have had this chance to have this conversation is that Karen and the other people have decided they want to dance.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So Karen says, oh, let's go up to Diana's room and raid her tape collection.
Oh, that's what they did. Okay, I was wondering because it got very quiet. So I guess because we need to hear this conversation and don't want to be screaming over it as well. Probably
so
twofold.
So they come back down with the tapes, I guess. And then I think, what does Gary say? Gary says, hey, listen, if you show me your boogie, I'll show you mine.
Yeah, and they were definitely like feeling loose. And I noticed that Gary, while he was dancing with Karen, is like, I mean, and they're wilding those two.
Yeah, there was a kind of a time jump there, for, you know, I don't know, 20 minutes. And he was no longer drinking champagne. Now he was drinking some cocktail.
Well, he grabbed something off the side. It looked like he just grabbed somebody else's cocktail.
Maybe.
Which, you know,
guilty at sometimes.
Guilty at some point in the past when we were very young.
But really funny because I think Ginger and Sid are like doing the Charleston, which was really weird.
Now, I did notice that Kenny wasn't around either. Did you notice that?
Kenny was not there for
Where is Kenny? Where's Kenny?
Anyway, they are so sloshed. It is so fun to watch them all dancing to disco and just being silly because this is not how we see our neighbors on
and I saw Ted do this kind of electric. He did this thing where I was like, is he having a seizure? Like he was really going for it.
It was wild. All I said to myself when I was watching this was, thank God nobody has to drive home.
Yeah, because they're just staggering through the cul-de-sac.
So then we go right into the next scene and Gary and Val are kind of staggering out. And Gary is he's laughing. He's loving it. He is so excited about this. And then they all kind of split up and go into their own respective homes. So Gary and Val arrive home, and there's this cool shot. It's like a bird's eye view above the staircase, kind of almost like you feel like you're a voyeur into what is going on here. And I think Val says, "Oh, I'm all discoed out."
Yeah.
But Gary wants to continue partying.
He's got a second wind, he said.
Right. Yeah, he is like giddy with excitement because of this promotion, but I think also because he's been drinking.
At this point, Valine says, you've got work in the morning. Like Mr.
Just
VP.
trying to tamp down the excitement here.
Yeah.
Tamp down the drinking.
But you can see it. Gary's mood changes immediately. And it's like, uh-oh, here we go. Here's the bad drunk.
Right. I mean, to me, in this moment, you realize, oh, this dude is completely smashed because he escalates like crazy real quick.
And he just change on a dime.
Yeah.
You know, boom, boom, boom.
Right.
Which, you know, I have seen that in the past with drunks. You know, they can get a little volatile real quick.
Yeah.
So they did a good job of portraying that.
His demeanor changes so much. He delivers a very famous line that would then be shown in other KnotsLanding reunion specials from here to the end of time.
Yes.
Where he says, I won't be talked down to in my own house.
Yeah.
This is my Gary look, by the way, if you hadn't noticed.
And of course, we get the backstory that he hasn't had a drink in 2 years.
Right.
And then he makes this.
First he keeps saying, he goes, are you making such a big deal about a few lousy drinks? And I'm thinking, dude, you've had more than a few lousy
more
drinks.
Than a few.
Clearly.
And he's like, why are you looking at me like that? Yeah. He's getting very like paranoid.
And she's being so supportive. I wrote down.
Well, if anything, I thought she was
way more reasonable than she needs to be.
I thought she was being maybe a little too submissive, to be quite honest. I was looking at it like, I think she was placating him, and I just kept thinking like, you should be harder on him. Yeah. But again, he was being very angry and violent. So maybe she's scared of him. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
It was just kind of weird. I just felt like she could have gone.
She was being very accepting. Like for me, let's say you had this drinking problem and all of a sudden you started drinking, I would be furious with you. And she was very like, trying to just talk him down and
maybe hope it's a one-off.
Right, exactly. At any rate, this is so weird. He suddenly brings up like her past dating experience when they weren't together for all those years. It comes out of blue.
Yeah, and he was like insinuating that maybe she was with another man, which I don't think that was really the case necessarily, but he seems to think so. So you could see he's getting like paranoia, like, all right, here we go. So the bad sides of Gary are coming out. Across the street at the Wards, we see Ginger in bed, and the 70s telephone rings, which we love. That 70s ringer. We do have a couple of 70s phones here, too. We do. Ginger picks up, and it's a call for Kenny from Sylvie.
Ginger asks, who? And then Sylvie says, oh, we've met a couple times. And then Ginger says, I know who you are.
Yes. So
Sylvie's asking, where's Kenny? And Ginger says, I don't know when he's going to be home. It could be a while. And then Sylvie says, oh, actually, I know. He's probably going to be home soon because he just left my place a half an hour ago.
Yeah. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, homewrecker in the house. Now we know. I mean, we thought there was some flirtation before in a previous episode when she was at the party with the rock band, Cosmic Steeple. Remember?
She sang Moon Dance by Van Morrison, and it was great. We really enjoyed her performance. And at that time, she was flirting with Kenny, but it seemed like Kenny was kind of pushing her away a little bit. Like, I'm in love with my wife and this is just a flirtation. I'm not going to go home with you. And remember, he was on the phone trying to find Ginger. So, of course, we know Kenny's a little, a bit
flirtatious,
a little flirtatious, a little swinger. So we don't know where this is going. But in this moment, we can see that she is causing trouble. So she even says to me like, yeah, just tell him I called. And then she says, have a nice night.
Wow.
Sylvie.
She probably loved playing that part, I'm sure.
Oh, how fun, right? A little bit later on, Kenny does come home, and Ginger's already asleep.
And you know what? I didn't notice it in that scene before, but she's wearing that jersey nighty thing again. That was so
football
popular.
Jersey
the
nighty.
Football jersey nighty. My sister had one. Janet from Three's Company had one.
Right.
You know it very well.
Kenny's kind of creeping around in the background, and he gets into his pajamas, or he's shirtless.
Takes off his shirt, I noticed.
And he goes in, and he goes around to hug her, and then they start making out pretty wildly there for a second.
I kept thinking right at that moment, I'm like, is she going to smell Sylvie's perfume? This is like kind of a common trope point, right? Yeah. Or is there going to be some lipstick
on the collar? So, they're kind of making out pretty passionately. And then Ginger just stops and says, oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you. Sylvie just called for you 30 minutes after you left her house.
She is totally giving him blue balls. You know what I mean? She's totally like getting her revenge right now.
Well, she says that. She says, oh, Kenny, I thought you were cooler than this. Having your girlfriend call you at your home, tacky. But he tries to like clean up the mess real quick. He says, oh, no, don't get it wrong. I'm just producing her record. I discovered her voice and she's really great and she's going to do really good things for us, meaning Kenny and Ginger, right? She's financially really, really big. And he says, what does he say?
He says, she's just a product to be packaged and sold. And then Ginger comes back and says, well, products don't call wives at 11 o'clock at night just to cause trouble.
And she's not wrong.
No, she is totally not wrong.
Intentional on the part of Sylvie, right?
Totally. Can't wait to see where this is going.
I know. So a couple of days have passed, and now we see Kenny there's hands around his chest, and they're kind of buttoning up his shirt.
Oh, yeah.
We don't know who it is at first, but then it is revealed that it is Sylvie. So now...
So I guess they weren't working in the studio, really. They weren't...
Well, unless they were working without a shirt on. Which I guess is possible for inspiration.
Well, it might have been hot in the studio.
Right.
I don't think they were.
I think it is now time to officially update the Scutzy Scorecard.
Oh, okay.
I think we can officially do it now.
All right. Do you need a marker? You got a marker?
I got a marker. We're going to do it. We're going to have to add Kenny because before it was just maybe innuendo or flirtation, but now we know for sure these two have slept together.
Okay, yeah, add that onto the card. So it's further confirmed when Sylvie recommends that they go on vacation, either like Hawaii or Virgin Islands, and Kenny comes back and says, "Oh, we'd be kicked out of the Virgin Islands." So at that point, you know they have fooled around, and of course they're not virgins anymore.
So Sylvie is just all like hot and bothered. She just loves Kenny so much. It's very clear. We've seen that in the other episode too. But she is upset that it feels like Ginger is always getting in the way, right?
Well, Kenny said something like,
"Call home again."
Yeah, he also said, "Don't get between me and my wife."
Right.
How am I going to explain?
Don't make me choose.
How am I going to explain a vacation?
Yeah.
To my wife, which is fine. She wants more out of this,
right?
And
he just wants to keep it. They're separate things. These are separate relationships. Just go with the flow here. And so she says something like at the very end, "Oh, no, don't worry, Kenny. I'm available whenever you need."
Yeah, whenever you want. I was like, "Oh, you're not playing hard to get, are you?" No. I'm here whenever you want me. I guess if you want to be a doormat.
Yeah, I was going to say just a little hint, Sylvie. That's probably not the way to go.
Yeah.
That's not the method. The final scene for this storyline in episode 12, we have Kenny showing Ginger photos of Sylvie, publicity photos, and asking her opinion on which one would make a better album cover.
I just thought, dude, you are so stupid.
Dense.
Yeah. I mean, are you...
First of all, can I just say neither one of those photos would make a good album cover, just from a design standpoint, graphic design. But this dude is completely a dunce, or is he doing it on purpose? Like he's flaunting it. Isn't that what she says?
She said you're flaunting it. I think he was doing it to cover his tracks.
This is the complete character assassination of Kenny Ward in this moment. And I almost felt like the actors were suddenly given this script and like they weren't even on board with it, or they saw it as being totally ridiculous, because it almost felt like either one of them was going to burst into laughter at any moment. And that's what I saw. I watched it a couple times. I was like, these are not the same people that were in that episode a couple weeks ago where they're all cuddling on the beanbag in front of the younger sister Jill. That felt so natural. This does not feel real.
Yeah,
this feels like left turn.
I was very disappointed because she literally asks him, "Have you slept with her?
Are you having an affair?
Are you having an affair?" And he lies to her.
Uh-huh.
He says, "I am not having an affair."
And then she just like goes back to her magazine.
Yeah, it was weird.
It definitely felt jarring to me. And like you say, I'd say disappointing.
Well, we'll have to see how it shakes out, because
True
obviously we've got more scenes coming
Yep.
with that storyline in the next episode.
Yes. But first, let's go back to the primary storyline of this episode and Gary. Let's see where we left off there. We're back to the same night of the party where Gary gets the promotion, and Sid and Karen are sitting on the couch.
Oh, they're having
fires blazing.
They've had a few drinks and they're
there's maybe
feeling
some,
good.
Some yacht rock playing in the background.
Yeah.
So far we've had some disco and some yacht rock, but no classical. Thank God. In the
Well,
Fairgate
you know
home
what
tonight.
I've noticed about the Fairgates too in the last few episodes? They've definitely got way more cuddly. Remember, they had their problem at the beginning of the season.
Sure.
And the last few episodes, it seems like Karen's ready to party,
Right.
and Sid's ready to party.
I wonder.
And again, it's
after
that thing
this
again.
situation where she found out she was pregnant and she lost the baby. I wonder if they're using protection now, because they've certainly been romantic.
Yeah,
quite
I mean,
often
I don't
since then.
think they want to have another baby. I don't think they're worried about that now.
So all that's missing in this moment is Reuniti on ice.
Yes. Reuniti on ice. That's nice.
But did you notice that Sid's voice was really like low and romantic in this moment? And so basically,
I noticed he looked very tan.
Yeah,
I noticed
yeah.
that. I thought maybe did they put self-tan on him?
Maybe.
He looked very like, okay.
So he wants to neck on the couch.
That's right.
and-
I thought that was funny. Necking on the
Yeah.
couch. If Diana heard that, she would have been like, old-fashioned people again. What's this necking?
Right. Anyway, they're kind of talking about the party earlier, and they're talking about the reaction that Gary and Val had to Gary's promotion. And then I think Sid System's like, oh, well, yeah, it seemed Gary was really flying high there by the end. And Karen says, at least.
Yeah. Now, then you start to hear these voices from outside, and you can hear it's Gary and Val arguing, like
Shouting outside.
And I guess that doesn't happen too often, at least in real life. I don't hear too many arguments in the neighborhood.
Once in a while you hear that, right?
Well,
Right?
sometimes you hear
Once
some
in a
crazy
while,
stuff,
yeah.
but I guess in the cul-de-sac, It's small.
Yeah.
It probably like echoes out.
So they're brought outside and they see that Gary is already pretty much in a rage and he wants to zoom off and leave. And he almost he's like, get out of the way, Val, or whatever. He almost kind of hits her. And so then even Laura comes out. Gary speeds off, leaving all of them in a cloud of dust. Sid says, oh, don't worry, Val. You just had a little fight. It's okay. He's probably going to an all-night movie. This is what I used to do.
And then she says something. He's not going to an all-night movie.
Yeah, she says, he's not like other husbands.
Yeah, and starts getting
She
dark.
reveals that he is an alcoholic.
Yeah, which is, again.
So at that point, I guess they didn't know.
I guess they didn't know.
Right?
Maybe not everybody knew, but maybe they did kind of have an idea. Maybe nobody formally came out and said it.
Right. It was kind of interesting because you would think that already, well, maybe Karen and Val are not that close yet, but you would think that would be something that would have come out at some point.
I'm sure it would have come out at some
several
point.
months of being neighbors and friends.
Yeah, I would think so.
I know, again, Richard, I remember knew that because he was serving a drink to Gary or trying to in that first episode. So, yeah. Anyway, Gary has left the cul-de-sac.
Left the cul-de-sac.
To parts unknown.
Well, I'm sure he's going places that we like.
I'm sure. The first of these places is a bar that looks somewhere we would absolutely fit in.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. I love a vintage bar.
Yeah, and Gary is sitting there like waxing philosophically about the difference between bourbon and a martini.
But he's slurring.
He is
really
already sloshing. I mean, this dude has fallen off the wagon very fast and very hard.
Yes. It's kind of like, I think, a little extreme.
What's sobriety, right? Like, it feels like he's been doing this for the last 2 years because he just picks up right where he left off.
Gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour.
Very comfortable at this bar. He's very comfortable talking to the bartender. And he's like, hey, why don't you have a drink with me? Come on.
Yeah, I think the bartender looked kind of familiar to me, too. I'm sure I got to do some research.
Look him up. Sorry.
No wonder. We'll look it up later.
But he was good. And he says to Gary, listen, I know I've been you before. I know what you're doing. Right now you are drinking to get drunk. You're not drinking to have fun. You're drinking to get drunk. And then he says eventually, at some point legally, I've got to stop you.
Right, I'm going to cut you off.
I'm going to cut you off. And then, just so happens this floozy shows up.
Don't call her a floozy. It's a lady with blonde hair.
She was what I would call a floozy back in the day for sure. Now, who did she remind you of?
Oh, I don't know, but she looked familiar. Do I know who she is?
No, probably you don't.
Oh.
I know who it is, but to me, it just reminded me of Peggy Lee. She had Peggy Lee's smoky voice. And she even kind of had a look that was a little Peggy Lee.
I guess I could see that.
I was grooving on this. In fact, from here on out, we're going to call her Peggy Lee Hooker.
Okay, I'm down with it. As long as I don't want to get her confused with TJ Hooker.
Yeah, not TJ Hooker. So Peggy Lee Hooker is played by Carolyn Conwell, and fans of The Young and the Restless will remember her as Detective Paul Williams' mother, Mary.
Did you watch this when you were a kid?
Yeah, off and on. I mean,
Okay.
I watched As the World Turns more, but I definitely kind of started with Young and the Restless, and I always thought that the Mary Williams character was really interesting because she just was not flashy like the rest of the women on, say, Young and the Restless. So in this show, right, KnotsLanding, where she's tarted up like a hooker, it was a surprise for me to see her looking like that because normally she's super pious with the cross around her neck and she's ridiculing everybody. She's very prudish. So it was really fun to see her.
She probably liked the role then. That's a fun role for her.
I think she probably would have already been on Young and the Restless.
Said she was a Texas girl too, didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
She had a little accent.
Oh, I loved it when she said, "Oh, don't worry, honey. You come back with me. I'll get you whatever you want and as much of what you want."
Right. I was like, wow.
Yes. Oh, so I don't want to update the Scutzy scorecard just yet because I don't know for sure that they're going to sleep together, but it's looking pretty.
It's looking pretty good.
Looking pretty promising. The next morning over at the Ewings, it's time to go look for the drunk.
Right. It's apparently he is not home.
He did not come home last night.
Did not come home.
So Laura's already there helping Val in the morning, and Karen and Sid come over, and it's time to explain to Sid exactly what an alcoholic is because he's not getting it. He's like, well, don't worry about it. He's going to come home. Everything's going to be fine. No, no, no. And Val says,
alcoholics don't come home.
Right. She says they go out, they start drinking, and they, what is it? What's
they go on and on and on and on. Yep. She also mentions that he has a history, I guess, of running away from responsibility,
conflicts.
conflicts. So, I think at this point they're going to go look for him.
Right. They're like, well, what do we do? What can we do? And Val says, well, we can go look for him. And Sid says, well, where should we start? She goes, the very first bar or liquor store that's nearest.
And so in my mind, knowing where Seaview Circle really is, I kept thinking like, oh, maybe they're going to be shooting down on like in Granada Hills. In fact, there's still some good vintage bars down there. But in the next scene,
I think the first shot we see is it says Palm Tree Liquor.
I knew this place immediately.
You know where it is?
Oh, I just passed it yesterday.
Oh, I can't believe
on the way
it.
home.
I can't believe it.
But I know it. I always see it.
Okay.
Because it's on Venice Boulevard.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's like, and you know where it is?
I love the line, though, first when Sid says, oh, gosh, I never knew there were so many liquor stores.
Yeah, I didn't know there's. Well, I said, you need to come down to our neighborhood.
Right.
Because there's plenty of liquor stores down here. But I just recognized so many of these places in this episode, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
And then, what also is triggering sometimes is you might recognize it, but then you're like, I don't know if it exists anymore. And then you can't find it online. So it has a memory, but
Right.
maybe because I didn't go in there, I wouldn't know. You know?
Val and Sid have apparently picked up the scent of Gary's, well, his breath, probably.
The booze. Did he leave a trail of booze behind him? Like,
So they've gone to the bar where he was the night before, right? And I guess it's kind of the early time of they're just opening up. There's still stools turned upside down, but the bartender's there.
now, was that Nikki's bar?
I think that was Nikki's bar.
Well, from the outside. So I actually looked up Nikki's bar too, because that rang a bell with me too.
Okay.
But if it is the same Nikki's bar, it was 2 minutes away from my old office in Venice.
Oh,
Couldn't
wow.
quite verify the
Wow.
outside.
So far we're not having a Valley bar crawl. We're having
it's
a
all
West L.A. bar crawl.
West L.A.
Which would be near where the studios are.
They're going as far as Sepulveda.
Okay, well, we'll get there. We'll get
yeah,
there.
we'll get there.
So inside the bar, Sid and Val are inquiring about Gary, and I think Sid refers to him as the tall, thin, blonde, handsome guy. But it's really the cowboy boots that tips him off. Oh, yeah. The Texan. So when it's revealed who these two are, they're not cops or lawyers. It's a friend and the wife. The bartender kind of takes Sid aside and says...
Yeah, he says at first he's like, "Well, I mind my own business here," but he takes Sid aside
He doesn't
and
want to
whispers
stay
in his
front of Valley,
ear,
and Gary left with
Peggy Lee Hooker. But he tells her pretty much immediately,
right.
like,
Val,
he left with a
Val
woman.
demands, like, let's not pussyfoot around here. I need to know what's going on. She's apparently he left with a woman.
And then in the next scene, we get another location, just like I was saying.
Yes.
And that's still there, and I pass it all the time, too.
Oh, my gosh.
Half Moon Motel
Right.
on Sepulveda.
Okay.
So that's in Culver City.
MGM Studios, Culver City.
It's
very
all
close.
close by.
I looked it up, and it has completely changed. I mean, it's the same building. but
I always
they've
see the sign.
Completely renovated
Yeah,
it.
but the sign
it
is the
doesn't
same.
look, like that anymore, but it's still the same kind of L-shaped layout.
And the sign is just iconic. There's
love
all along Sepulveda is... I think, wasn't Sepulveda was part of the original Route 66, I think
you're
too.
right.
So on that strip,
There's a stretch where it's just
all these little
motels,
vintage motels.
roadside.
Yeah, and there's still a few cool little restaurants and things.
Hey,
there,
listen,
too.
in South LA, kind of where we live too, there are definitely still some of these type of motels where
I love them.
perhaps stays shorter than a night would happen.
We have a great one down the
renting
street.
by the hour.
We have the great one
Change
down the
sheets
street.
quickly before the next people come in at 2.
Well, they do it, and they do a lot of filming in these places too. The one down the street, remember, is the Solar,
Right.
And
Of course,
they
there's
film
the Snooty Fox. I'm
the
sure is
Snooty
another
Fox, and they have great signs, great lighting. That's a good business.
It's really weird because somehow Sid knows the room number that they're in.
Well, maybe the guy. I don't know how he knew the room number.
It's really weird. Anyway, they
was
pop up to
weird.
the motel room, and Peggy Lee Hooker, she answers the door, and they're asking for the gentleman that she was with, and she says, "Oh, he's long gone." And then Val says, "No, his car's right there." She said, "Oh, honey, that's my car now. I paid $400
$400 for it.
Gary sold his car to a hooker.
I
for
couldn't
$400.
really understand some of the things she was saying, and I know you said you picked it up. Maybe it's got
basically-
your Southern genealogy.
So basically, she tells them that Gary is long gone. First, he went to the bar across the street, but then he went on a little tour of the bars down the Southern California coast, right?
Yes, I heard that part,
I think she also mentions that he was headed to Vegas. That's why he needed the $400.
Right. He was going to go to Vegas.
Wild.
I was going, wow, he's going to be long gone, isn't he?
Right. Peggy Lee Hooker says, "Oh, honey, I am not his keeper. I'm just his lover."
And Val is like, oh. So now get the Scuts meter out.
Get the Scutzy Scorecard out. Oh, this isn't it.
That's not the Scutzy Scorecard.
Okay, I got the Scutzy Scorecard.
Get that scorecard out. We can now confirm.
We now can confirm a new addition.
It
to the
is
Scutzy
confirmed.
Scorecard. We have Gary joins us. Gary, our sweet Gary.
The master can confirm that Gary has slept with Peggy Lee Hooker.
Oh my gosh! So
Gary.
far we've got Laura at 1, Richard at 1, Kenny at 1, Gary at 1.
Wow.
Woo! All right. So then at that point, Peggy Lee Hooker says to Val, "Oh, honey, I feel sorry for you because that man of yours don't care about anything but the bottom of a bottle."
And that's the name of the episode, kids.
Val says, "Sure he does. Just depends on the woman."
Right.
Woo,
She was
Val!
like, stinger,
Burn.
burn, facial.
Facial.
You're facial.
Noted.
Dude. So we have another bar scene
one
coming
bar
up.
to the next,
From
kids.
one bar to the next. This is like the bar crawl episode. But what was cool is there's this 50s or 40s, rockola jukebox. And so
With vinyl.
with vinyl, and then you could see that Gary's putting a record on. The record comes on, and I was listening. I was going like, this to me sounds like somebody's done a country version of the KnotsLanding theme, but it's not quite the theme. It's like a variation.
I heard it too.
I heard it. I was going like, they've taken
Just
the
a
theme.
little piece. There's a little piece where
and
it
then
goes,
they repeated it a few times, but they changed, like they made like a variation, inverted the.
So it's funny because there's a guy at the bar stool behind Gary, and he uses actually a racial slur that is often used for white people.
I was wondering if that was meant to be because, Gary is like a country guy. Because obviously he's a little out of place. He's wearing his cowboy boots and the cowboy shirt.
That's what it was. It was like this guy, we have to listen to this country hick music again, right?
Yep.
That's what he's saying. So immediately, Gary is just like, he's just enraged. He's like, "What do you mean? This is the music of our country. You don't like our country?" So it just turns into this crazy bar brawl, like immediately. The bartender is very like hands off. And so is everybody else in the bar, really. They're just kind of like, okay, you guys just go at it. You guys just throw cue balls at each other. And
it's like your typical Hollywood brawl. Yeah.
Because they always got to have the beer bottle hitting the back of someone's head, which they definitely had that.
And of course, he had the pool cue at one point. And then he's like, swings the pool cue and like
the
smashes
craziest part,
things.
though, is when they hit him over the head with a beer bottle and he falls. They think he's kind of out of commission for a while. And then there's a shot of them at the bar. And then all of a sudden, they get pulled back.
Right, that was a good shot.
That was cool.
I like that.
It
did remind me of the old school Western bar brawl.
Oh, it was that.
Totally.
It was totally that. It was Destry Rides Again, but in KnotsLanding. Magically, through the wonders of TV writing, Sid and Val, who are still looking for Gary, magically just happen upon the bar where the brawl has just happened, and Gary's being escorted out by the police.
I mean, what's the likelihood of that happening here?
Los Angeles, with I don't know how many intersections there are.
I mean, let's just say you could drive around for
days,
and you wouldn't hit the same area.
So where do you think this location is, Douglas?
My gut was saying they're probably still on Sepulveda, but I don't know, because I saw a little street sign, but I couldn't read it, and I tried to read it with a magnifying glass. I couldn't see it. Did you find out what it was?
You and I have been inside this building. We have been inside this bar.
Oh my God. Did they totally revamp it?
Yes.
Oh no. Is it the Tattletale Room?
No.
Is
it currently an Italian restaurant in Culver City that we have been to several times.
It's where Brunello was?
Brunello's.
No way.
It's Brunello's.
Oh, that's so weird. That's
crazy. The
crazy.
address is, I think, 6001 Washington. It used to be Mickey's Bar. And it is now Brunello's.
Oh, awesome.
It was kind of in disrepair, you could see in the show, right?
I knew it would be in
This
Culver
is a restaurant
City.
that when we lived in Santa Monica,
it's
we
on
used to
Washington.
go to all the time. It has actually recently changed ownership, and we went there recently. It was kind of a little different, but it used to be absolutely our favorite pizza in the West Side.
Oh, it was like a proper Italian,
Yeah.
like family ran this business, and like, you know,
It's almost like it's one of those places where you could go
mortadella,
back. You could go back several times
Yeah.
and always have something new that is excellent that you'd want to try again, but you can't because you want to try something else.
but anyway,
Anyway, that's that.
cool.
So Val is watching as Gary's being pulled out and into the cop car, and she's like, "Can I go? That's my husband."
can I go in the car with you?
So then we go to the police station and we see Karen arriving to meet Sid. And basically it's like a good, nice delivery of exposition of what has happened.
Yeah.
And really it's a way to show that this was just a little snafu here at the moment of the commercial break here. Everything's going to be fine. The car is back in possession of KnotsLanding Motors because it wasn't even Gary's.
It was a dealer
to sell
car
in the first place.
Sid mentions that he paid
the bar
Peggy
off.
Lee Hooker.
Oh, he paid Peggy Lee Hooker.
I think he paid her
okay.
back the $400.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And he also paid for the damages at the bar.
Yeah.
And then the two hooligans that he was fighting with have decided not to press charges. So none of that is an issue at this point because we have to keep the storyline going. We can't have Gary, the drunk Gary, in the cell for the rest of the episode. We have to have him causing havoc throughout the rest of the episode and into the next one.
Meanwhile, I was thinking, is this coming from Sid's guilt that he gave him the drink and started
started the ball rolling.
So to speak.
When I say the ball is rolling, it is speeding down
The
that
bottle is rolling.
Once home from the police department, Gary is getting ready for work.
And he's still combative.
Yeah, and Val's like, you don't need to go to work today. I'm sure Sid will expect that you're going to stay home after everything that's just happened. He's like, no, I'm good. I can do it. He's like, oh my God, why are you so all over me? I've had 3 lousy drinks, and you're suddenly all over me. And again, I was thinking in that moment, she's being very accommodating.
Yeah.
I would be furious if I were her. And she's being very calm and just like, no, let's just take it easy. Let's just,
Well, she obviously knows his mentality. She's been down this road before.
Yeah, and she's being especially accommodating after finding out that he slept with Peggy Lee Hooker.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she didn't even make any mention of that. So
And he's looking at her, though, with totally different eyes at this point, in my opinion. These are not kind eyes.
No. But anyway,
well, he's upset because she's making a federal case out of all of this, according to him, after only a couple drinks. And also, she feels that he's thrown him under the bus because she's gotten all the friends involved and his boss.
And Sid.
But I'm thinking to myself, no. Gary, Val didn't do that. You did that. You making a huge uproar outside of the house at, midnight or whatever that was, leaving everybody in a cloud of dust. You did that. They know. It wasn't Val.
It was the booze talking.
It was the booze talking.
Let's booze.
Booze.
It's not booze, though. It's coffee. But anyway, shh. Don't tell anybody.
All right, so hangover be damned. Gary has shown up at KnotsLanding Motors to work.
And he has a Band-Aid on his forehead.
Yeah.
From the bar fight.
He's approving some artwork for a new sign at KnotsLanding Motors. I thought this was really funny.
It was a caricature of Sid.
And it was like hand-drawn.
Yeah, hand-drawn.
How is this going to be translated into a sign? I have no idea.
I don't know.
But he's so excited, and he shows Sid. He says, look, this is going to be a great sign, I think. And then Sid says, oh, I don't care. As long as you make me look pretty. And Gary says, oh, don't worry. Dimples and all.
Dimples and all. That was cute.
So then Gary says, oh, I have to get ready for this lunch meeting with Mandel and his money man. And I guess they're trying to get a deal going for them to buy a fleet of cars from the dealership. And already Sid is nervous.
Yeah, Sid looks nervous like, oh boy, like this might not be a good idea.
Yeah, he says, I'll take the lunch meeting. Don't worry about it. These guys just want their hands held for a little bit or something like that.
Yeah, but you can tell that Gary doesn't want to let go of this.
Oh no, I mean, this is his brand new title, VP.
Yeah,
he wants to do this. But he says, oh, Sid, I can see why you would be a little concerned that maybe I'm not going to be able to handle it. And he says, yeah, you don't want a rummy slobbering all over him. A rummy, that's an old school.
What does that mean?
Rummy would be like a drunk.
Oh, okay, a rummy. Oh, I never heard that one. Yeah. I thought I knew all the old drunk terminology. What about,
Yeah.
time for this.
I know, can you show that?
Take a drink. Look at these.
Those are fantastic.
Take a drink. I got these up in Alameda. And there's a whole set of drunk glasses with different caricatures. This one is just like, you too.
It's the artwork.
To your health.
It's the artwork that was like often in those old vintage greeting cards. I love those illustrations.
This one says, bottoms up. Bottoms up. Okay.
These are all the tropes from the old drunks, right? And and he actually mentions, Gary mentions a song called show me the way to go home. He's like singing it. Apparently it's an old 1920s drinking song.
Oh, okay. See,
Right.
I'm learning so much during the podcast. Hopefully you are too.
So basically Gary's, again, excusing why Sid might think that, he can't take the meeting, but he's like, don't worry, I got this. And then says, no, you're right. I think you do. Go ahead and do it. You're going to be fine.
And he says something like, go get him, Tiger.
Yeah.
So Sid is such a good guy. Again, he always proves himself. Even through this whole episode, he's already taking care of.
But maybe sometimes he needs to be a little bit more strong.
I know, but
a little bit more, like Karen said in that last episode, you always see the good in people. Maybe he needs to start picking up on some of these other cues.
But he is so sweet. Oh. I do really love Don Murray. Don Murray, thank you for being such a good Sid, So the next scene, we're seeing, again, another cool-looking mid-century location. And
kind of starts off like panning outside.
Yeah.
And then you go
And
in.
it's weird because you can see reflections. You're going through the reflections. There's the two businessmen that look really boring. The one with a kind of bald head.
Totally.
And they're just talking all this.
They are yammering on about the difference between like new technology or the discoveries of new technology in like the current era and then also in the past. And it's almost like this double talk that doesn't really make any sense.
And meanwhile, you see Gary just looks bored out of his mind.
To me, I'm like, oh, it's 2:00 after I've been drinking all night. Oh, he's hungover right now.
Yeah, he's feeling
He is
crappy.
like, I wish I was in bed right now.
Yeah, then they take it inside. I'm pretty certain. I'll have to look again to just double check the exteriors. But from the inside, I was pretty sure it's the warehouse in Marina Del Rey, which is like right on the Via Marina.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Again, we're all on the west side with all these locations.
And they did a lot of filming in Marina Del Rey throughout the whole
later
series.
on we see the Marina Del Rey
Always. But I'm pretty sure it's that location. And then they keep shooting back and showing like the bartender. He's got his like 70s mustache and kind of 70s,
We
80s
celebrated
hair.
my birthday at the warehouse one year.
Yes,
I believe.
that's right. I do remember that.
Yeah. It's a cool spot. It's one of these old vintage kind of like nautical themed steak and seafood houses, right?
Yeah, it's not as tropical as Old Tony's.
Right, which I thought at first maybe it was
That's
Old
what I thought at
Tony's,
first it was Old Tony's.
But then I looked at that exterior. I'm like, that is not Old Tony's.
Then you see Gary motions the bartender while these guys are still hammering on about whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, I'll have one of whatever they're having."
Martini.
So here we go.
Gary cannot resist the temptation, and I do think that the conversation that these two businessmen were having, which is so like esoteric in a way, was meant to show that Gary is out of his league here in this position already. Here are these two like savvy businessmen who are talking about genetic engineering or something, and like the man on the moon versus Captain Cook. And then they're talking at one point about cheating on their wives with the secretary. And Gary's just like, what?
Well, I would even notice that, Gary, he's pretty young, So, I mean, there's definitely a big age gap between those people, too. Ted Shackelford was probably like in his early 30s at this point.
Agreed.
And those guys are clearly like in their 50s or...
They've been around the block.
Yeah, they've been around the block.
They've been around the secretary table. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. They're just different worlds kind of colliding.
Yeah. And I think at that moment, because he's probably hungover and all this has been going on, like Gary has very little brain power to be discussing all this.
Well, we could argue that all the time. No. Are you saying that he might not be the? Am I saying that
I was just saying because he was hungover.
Okay, all right.
Maybe
he might not be the
smartest
smartest
crayon in the box.
Yeah.
Gary returns from the business meeting and he is all jovial once again. He's like, Sid, hey, it was great. It went really well. And so we're thinking, oh, the deal must be sealed.
I was a little worried because I keep thinking like, he's got his beer goggles on. I'm sure it was terrible.
Yeah, we don't really know what.
Maybe we're going to find out later. I bet you we will find out.
So Sid can tell that Gary, once again, is completely drunk. And he says, hey, Gary, why don't you go in the back office and just kind of cool your heels for a while? And maybe call Val, check in on her. And immediately Gary's like, what? Like, he's sick of all this babysitting. He doesn't want any of this,
And it's weird because this is only one day since he started boozing.
Yeah, right. But that's why I think where we are led to believe, even though it does feel like it's escalating so fast, that this is very familiar territory for this character. And it's really like he's just picked up where he left off when he stopped drinking. It's like, what do they always say? Riding a bike. You can't ever forget how to ride a bike. What's the saying?
Yeah, you never forget how to ride a bike.
Something like that.
It's like riding a bike.
It's like riding a bike.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just right.
Drinking is like riding a bike.
Drinking is like riding a bike.
Get
Do you think they're going to hate us because we're condone drinking?
Well, I think we can, when we talk about it, we'll be more serious. We
Yeah.
will eventually.
We are serious about it.
We're very serious about drinking.
We love drinking.
Okay. Sid says to Gary, listen, I know you're an alcoholic. Gary's like, what? At this point, he knows that Val has told everybody that he is an alcoholic. So he is super upset. Sid says, it's nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, people wear it as a badge of courage because it takes a lot to admit that, right? Mm-hmm. Although, has Gary really admitted it technically in this moment? Not really.
Well, and then I think Gary says, the martini lunch is an American institution.
Exactly.
Which, in those days, it was. I know your dad used to engage in the martini lunch, right?
He was actually like a madman. He worked in advertising in Chicago. You think they weren't having martini lunches?
My dad, too. Same thing, working at NBC.
Right. So I like that they added that into it, even though they're just at a car dealership. But still, that would have been a business deal, right? If you're going to buy a fleet of cars, that would be something that you did celebrate.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe then thinking about it that way, probably deals were done anyway because they were all drunk.
Sure.
So it wouldn't really matter. It's not like he's going to be any more drunk than they were because they're all having martinis.
Right. Regardless of the martini lunch being an American institution, Sid is still concerned. And I think Gary says something like, oh, Saint Sid, you can take this job. You gave me this job. You feel sorry for me or something, and you can stuff it.
Yeah, and then there's almost a punch. I think Sid grabs his hand. So he stops it, but Gary almost punches him in the face.
Yeah.
So I was like, is the bromance over now?
It appears so. And there is a moment, though, where you do see in Gary's face, he does, for that moment, he's like, oh, my God.
He's like, what am I doing? Yeah. It was good acting.
Yeah,
Ted.
It was good. So he leaves, storms out of KnotsLanding Motors, which means he's going to pop down to the bar on 3510 Crenshaw.
Oh, that's recess room.
I'm just kidding.
No. Well, actually...
That's where the location was for the KnotsLanding Motors.
Right, but when we go to the next scene, this is the one that stumped me. Mm-hmm. I was looking up the recess room. I could only find a recess room in Fountain Valley, and I know that's not where it is.
Okay, so I did a little bit more research as well.
Well, I did see the address next door. I just saw 9073.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Well, I don't know. It just said 9073. I don't know what street it is.
I'm going to just say something right now. When we record this, sometimes we have a lot of research to do. We have a lot of stuff to do to get this thing going. And so sometimes we kind of don't get to every little bit and piece. But I did find a recess room that may have existed in Van Nuys.
Oh, that would make sense.
Which is apparently no longer there. And it was in the movie Barfly.
Oh, okay.
And someone was looking for the exact location. I didn't have a chance to actually go back to the episode and look at the front of it, but it kind of looked like the front of it.
Well, I bet you if you look at 9073 Van Nuys Boulevard, maybe we'll find right next door on Google Maps. We'll do it later.
Yeah. Back home, we have Karen and Val bringing home a plant in the back of, I guess it's a station wagon or whatever. And they're like,
it's Karen's station wagon.
And they're wrestling with it or whatever. And I thought it was great.
They spilled the dirt in there. It's very real.
Yeah, it's very real. It was like that scene when they were bringing home the baker's rack.
Yep.
A couple episodes ago. And magically, Sid comes home right around that time. I love this line. They're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And Karen says, Val and I just bought out the nursery to ruin your weekend. Right? Because Sid's going to have to plant all the plants.
Yeah, they're going to make him do all the dirty work.
So at that moment, they get into the heart of the matter, the alcoholism that Gary is suffering with. And Val goes into this big, long backstory about how he started drinking because his family always made him feel weak or that he didn't have a lot of character. And so Gary kind of fed into that. And so that's why he drinks. And I think what was interesting is that Sid and Karen are very casual about this. They're like, oh, don't worry, Val. You'll help him. You did it once before.
Yeah, I think they don't really know what it's like to be dealing with an alcoholic at this point. The severity of it,
or how long lasting this is. This is forever. This isn't just a couple months ago here and 2 years ago there. It's it's the rest of his life. He's dealing with this, right? Val says what's different this time is that she realizes that while in the past he may have been drinking for a specific reason, she feels that this time he's drinking for any reason.
Any reason, right?
Because she felt like finally they were on their feet and in the direction of going where they wanted to go, right? They moved to California. He's got this job. He's got this promotion.
Right.
Everything's going well.
And she said something like, he fits in now. And she said something like, he's scared.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
They all agreed.
I think that's the thing. Ultimately, now he's scared of the fact that he's going to screw it up, right?
Yeah.
Because he's finally got to a good place. And yeah, I mean, I've known people who've had that same kind of thing going on.
I have to say, this dude slipped on a banana peel here like that. And it's just...
Well, it is television, so... Another location.
Oh, okay.
The next scene.
You know where this is?
Oh, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's Santa Monica Boardwalk.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, at first I was like, is he in Skid Row? Because I saw the fires burning in the trash cans. They're supposed to be ruffians. I got to tell you, I was looking at them going like, these people don't look rough at all. I thought it was a gay cruising thing going down because they all looked a little too polished. They didn't look like ruffians or whatever you want to say.
Alien in Music and the biker gang.
It's very
they're all just a little too polished.
Too polished.
I was confused here. Okay, so basically what happens is he goes down these stairs and this group of ruffians or gang members or whatever they're supposed to be.
They say it's a toll road.
For fancy dudes.
For fancy dudes. So I guess Gary's a fancy dude with them boots on.
Yeah, exactly. So they want his money, obviously. But what's interesting is that there's a group of people at the bottom of the stairs and then two guys come up from the top. And is it the same people from the bar? That's what I thought.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't notice that.
The second bar where the big brawl happened, I think that it is because they said, "Oh, you got fixed up. Nice to see you again," or something like that.
Okay, maybe then.
I don't know. The one guy who is like the lighter hair, he looked very much like that guy, but then the other guy didn't look as much like the other guy.
So maybe they did that filmed it on the same day, and they had like, you'll be the day players for like
and
this.
They're like probably stunt people.
Yeah, and come back later.
To be in a bar fight, they'd be stunt people. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, the gist of the matter is that they steal his money. And he's so drunk that he doesn't even really know what's going on.
He doesn't even know that his wallet's gone.
He's like, I'm going to fight you. And then they're like, oh, yeah, don't worry. You're not going to fight us. There's no point. You're not going to, you're worthless right now.
And then conveniently, in the next scene, he's at another liquor store.
Yeah.
And he is trying to get some bourbon.
Yeah.
And I recognize the shopkeeper. Mm-hmm. I don't know what his name is, but I definitely recognize him. I go, I'm sure I've seen him in other things.
His name is Hal Williams.
Oh, cool. I've seen him before.
He was Lester Jenkins on 227.
Oh, okay, good. I knew his face. I was like, he's so familiar to me.
He's been in a million things, but I didn't really look on the IMDb to see like where this particular credit fell in line with his career. But yeah, I instantly noticed him as well.
What happens is he doesn't have any money.
He only has change at this point.
And so the only thing he can buy is like cheap, like night train wine or whatever that crap is.
And he's like, no.
And so they almost have an altercation. And
he points the gun. He
pulls a gun. Yeah, he pulls a pistol here. Like, get the hell out of here.
Gary's kind of scared out of there, and he just leaves. And then maybe a little bit later on, you see him stumbling.
Yeah, drunkenly under the pier.
He looks like a hot mess, kind of like me today. I mean, that's kind of why I didn't really do my hair. I wanted it to be very Gary, feeling very Gary today. What do you think?
Really trying.
Okay, so in this moment, Gary is mumbling to a dog.
There's an old dog, and he's talking to the old dog, and even the old dog doesn't want to hang out with him. The old dog leaves. Dogs are generally, they're very good judges of character. Mm-hmm. And I read something recently, you can connect with a dog just by looking at them. Sure. There's like a direct connection, they say, even into the soul and feelings. So, they're super receptive animals.
Yeah.
Even more than cats, I think.
But I mean, maybe the dog was just scared off by Gary's breath. He's been somewhere else since the liquor store because now he has a bottle of beer. So he's somewhere he's scrounged up the coins to at least get a single bottle of beer.
Yeah.
Things are not going so well for Mr. Garrison Ewing.
Yes.
This is an interesting scene between Karen and Val. I think they're in Val's living room, maybe
kitchen. I saw coffee.
So yeah, they're just kind of talking about what's going on here, and I think Val is saying to Karen, "I'm not sure I can go through all of this again, like dealing with all of this." And Karen says, "Oh no, you're built hard as granite." And I guess she says something like, "Oh, all the friends around here, we call you the little engine that could."
Yeah, it was her nickname there. They have a little
behind her back.
Behind her back, they call it.
She's a little engine that could And she can
She
do
can.
this again.
I think Karen will do anything for Val. She really is a good voice of reason. And I think what she also is trying to say is that life isn't always going to be perfect. Like, we always get hit with setbacks, no matter what.
That was the funny part of the scene, because I think she actually calls her dumb.
She did call her dumb?
She goes, well, it's pretty dumb to think that Gary would not have a setback at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't say you're dumb, Val, but she says it in a way like, that was pretty naive of you to think that he would just continue through life and never have to deal with this again. And so that was kind of funny. But I going back to what you were saying, I absolutely marked this as really the first time where we see the real connection between these two characters. We had hinted at it a long time ago in another episode, but this is the first time where I feel like Karen and Val's relationship is getting closer than, say, Karen and Laura's or Val and Laura's.
Yeah, we don't see
this level
relationship
of intensity with those people that we see here with
They're
Karen and
besties
Val.
for sure. They're besties.
From here on out. Another really interesting shot here, cinematography-wise, where the camera is, again, outside, kind of voyeuristically, kind of looking at. I couldn't even figure out where we were at first.
Well, I will say, and there's another scene too where it's very arty-farty, kind of like cinematography. So I think overall in this episode, that's what we're seeing, some interesting
choices
camera
made.
work. I'm not necessarily an aficionado of camera work, but
you don't have to be. You know it when you see it.
You know it when you see it. Oh, I hear. Hang on, the phone's ringing.
The phone's ringing.
Hello? Oh, hi, Eric. Hey, we were just getting ready to talk about you. We were just going to say how in this episode, we haven't really seen your face. Oh, so this is the first episode that the Fairgate children are not going to appear. Oh, okay. All right, well.
Hopefully we'll see you in the next one.
Hopefully see you in the next one. We got to get back to the episode. Okay? All right, bye.
Well, that was very kind of him to call and let us know.
Yeah, so that's where the next scene actually opens up, is that
we're in the Fairgate kitchen.
We're at the Fairgate kitchen, and Eric's talking to Karen, and they mentioned something like the wallet was found.
Right.
On Powell Street, which I was like, in San Francisco.
That's what I thought too. I was like, oh wow.
I mean, there must be a Powell Street in LA.
Because it has been established that it's been 3 days that Gary has been missing now. Yeah. Okay, so everybody's kind of getting into action of where they're going to go, how they're going to, what's their next move.
Yeah.
And then Laura looks to Richard and is like, you're not going to go join them? And Richard says, oh, come on, Laura. Gary doesn't like me. I try to be his friend when they first moved here, but he is not interested. And then he says, 3 days he's been gone? He could be anywhere. He could be in Pago. Then Laura gives him this look like, Richard?
Yeah. Then
Richard says, oh, okay, I'll go. And then there's this smile that Laura gives to herself. It's
so
like
maybe now the power play has happened.
Yes.
As we saw it happen in the last episode.
This to me was a true moment connecting the last episode to this episode, that Laura is wearing the pants in the family, even if she's wearing a skirt in this episode.
Laura is in charge.
And she has basically motivated Richard up off his ass to go help. Now, it is interesting because John Plachette does write the next episode, so I'm sure he will be writing himself a nice juicy moment.
I hope he's going to be writing himself some.
But I love the connection that it has to this other episode, and it's one of the very few times so far in season 1 where we have seen a through line of these storylines.
Well, this being a two-parter, maybe that also gets the ball rolling where they're going to be like, okay, this is how we go.
Right.
Serial.
And of course, we also have the Sylvie situation too, which is a connection from a previous episode.
It's nice not to have them worried about wrapping it all up in an hour or 48 minutes or whatever.
I agree, because sometimes it feels so rushed.
Because they're trying to wrap everything up.
The bows are almost too perfect.
Yeah, like at the last 5-10 minutes are really fast.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. So, yeah, I kind of like the pacing is getting better.
Gary clearly has spent the night under the pier, and we got some more interesting camera work, because now we have like a handheld.
It was very cool camera work under there. I really enjoyed that. It was very arty-farty.
I think it's the first time we've seen it in season 1.
Yeah.
However, if you remember when we watched The Three Sisters, they also used the handheld to be sort of like the eyes of, maybe the spirits of the three girls. But here it was very effective to show sort of him being off balance and maybe a little disoriented.
I kept singing Under the Boardwalk after that. The song. Under the boardwalk.
But yeah, he was low for Gary.
This was the biggest low.
Low.
How low can you go? This is how low you can go. He has no more beer left in his bottle, and then he sees a bum who's passed out, who has a bottle, like clutching his bottle, and Gary steals the bottle from the bum and drinks what's left, and then gives it back to him. Gosh. This one ended on a real low point for Gary.
This is the bottom of the bottle.
This is the bottom of the bottle.
So where is it going to go from here?
Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? In the next episode.
Part 2. Episode 13.
Episode 13. Are you ready for it?
Written by John Plachette.
Yes.
Let's just go into it.
Let's go into it. Ready? Let's go.
I never drank any of my beer. Oh, that's for the second one. Okay.
Get some coffee. Get some beer. We're going.